I wonder if the disciples ever knew that the story would end like this. For 3 years, they walked with this Jesus teacher. For 3 years, they saw incredible acts. And then it seems to be over. And it's over not in the way a boy band dissolves after it's done and everyone just goes their own little ways, but it ends in this spectacular failure of their group. They disband, they run away, and Jesus is left there on a cross. I wonder if they ever would have imagined in all of their journey that this would be the way their story ends. On Good Friday, we had our table here, and on the table we placed symbols of the end. We had a plant, because it happens in the Garden of Gethsemane. We had a rope. He was bound and taken away. We had a blanket, Peter warming himself around the fire and simply denying Jesus. We had a little gavel representing judgment and a kangaroo court. We had hammer and nails, torture and execution, and a cross. Here lies Christ hanging from a cross. Could the disciples ever have imagined that this was how the story would end? And we're left asking ourselves, how could we do this? By we, I mean collective humanity. How cruel can we be? All these questions are left. And we use a symbol of the cross to recognize those. So here we have Mary. And she's standing at a tomb, and I would imagine that she is very confused. She's standing at a tomb that at one point, not too long ago, was closed. And here it is open, and the body is gone. I think this story is maybe best encapsulated with just a few of the phrases that are spoken between Mary and the angels and Mary and Jesus as they go. So Mary's there weeping. She's distraught. She's overcome with grief. And through her veil of grief, she looks down into the tomb again. And there she doesn't see emptiness, she sees two figures. They're called angels, they're in white, the text says. And the text says that one is at the head of Jesus and one is at the foot of Jesus, or where the body used to be. And they're trying to figure out, she's trying to figure out what is going on. They ask her this very poignant question. Why are you weeping? But isn't the answer to that question obvious? Of course she's weeping. Imagine what she's gone through. I think that's one of the reasons she's weeping. Absolutely. Somebody that she was a friend with, her confidant, her mentor, her teacher, her rabbi, this person is gone. Of course she would weep. But I think she's weeping for another reason too. Think about Jesus and what he's done and what he's been through. Think about what he taught and the dream he cast for his people. The dream he cast was incredible. Imagine a world where there was no more oppression. Imagine a world where there was real justice. Imagine a world where the poor were made equal with the rich. Imagine a world where the hungry were fed and the naked were clothed. Imagine that world. But he's gone. And the story that Mary was dreaming for her people seems to die with him. Jesus hears this interaction. Or we're told it's Jesus. There's at least another character that's introduced into the story here. Mary thinks he's a gardener. Mary turns around and sees this person, and Mary says to this person, "Sir, if you have taken him, tell me where you've put him." Because Jesus has just asked the very same question that the gardeners asked. Whom are you looking for? You see, something doesn't make sense in this story to me. It says that Jesus is talking to Mary, but Mary doesn't recognize her. And I don't understand that. This is a forensic sketch. And a forensic sketch is used when somebody sees a suspect, when they don't have their camera out, and so they take all this idea of what this person was and looked like, and they talk to an artist, and the artist makes a rendering, and the rendering is close enough that you could find the person. It's not exact, but it's close. And this is just with somebody that somebody saw in passing. But Mary has been hanging out with Jesus for a long time. How come she can't recognize the gardener? How come she can't recognize Jesus? Something isn't making sense. She turns around. She looks back into the tomb. I can only imagine she's overwhelmed by the angels and the gardener. And the gardener, who supposedly is Jesus, says, "Mary." Something changes for Mary in this moment. She recognizes that voice. She turns and she says, "Rabbi." Now, I've been told that there's never an instance in the English language when you can use an exclamation point and a question mark to finish a sentence. But I think this is a pretty good example. Like, all of the excitement of rabbi. Rabbi? And all of the doubt and question. Rabbi? Mixed into one word, into one explanation. I'm just going to come right out and say this. I don't necessarily think that the bodily resurrection of Christ, that the reanimation of the atoms that made up the body of Jesus is necessary for this story to still be true. That this story has truth in it, regardless of whether or not the body is reanimated. Jesus says, "Mary, don't cling to me. I'm ascending to the Father and to your Father, my God and your God." It's beautiful. Here, in the image of the gardener, Mary sees Jesus. Jesus is not going to be contained just to one body. Our Muslim brothers and sisters have a tradition called the Hajj. And once in their lifetime, they are to make this journey. They're to make this journey to Mecca. And there, they reenact a story of Abraham from a long time ago, where Abraham is looking for water and they're instructed to walk counterclockwise around this black rock 7 times. They go and they try to remember this site as a holy site. Now, imagine if the character of Jesus was still alive. Like, why would you come to Chemainus United Church when you could go see the real deal? The story is not about a body being resurrected, but about the dream being resurrected. That the light was not extinguished, but the light goes on. That out of death, there can be life. And who would have ever imagined that this is how the story would continue. You know, I think in all of our lives, we have Good Friday moments. Moments of unbearable loneliness. Moments of excruciating pain. Moments of inhumane torture. And yet, life is born out of death. The story goes on, maybe not in the way we thought it would, but the story goes on. So there are 3 pieces I want to impart to you. The first is be open to it. You see, the thing is, I imagine Mary at the open tomb, and it's like there is a 0.01% chance of resurrection in her mind. That there's just the faintest possibility that life can come out of death. There's the faintest hope that the story can go on, even though it seems to be over. Our job as people of faith is to recognize the stories of resurrection like we see them. I think resurrection is happening all over the place, in all different ways. And our job is to say, there is resurrection, and there is resurrection, and there is resurrection, and there is resurrection. And maybe you've experienced this in your own life as well. And finally, I think we're being invited to participate in it as well. That when we see resurrection happening, we're invited to participate in that. In all the beauty, in all the confusion, in all the joy that is resurrection, we are invited to participate in it. So to finish, just 2 stories. 2 stories of resurrection. And this first one, I can't remember if I've ever told you, which is bad. I already feel like, like a father-son relationship, or like, have I ever told you that story? Yes, Dad, you've told it 20 times. So I may have told you the story, I may not have. So I was in Israel a few years ago. And Israel is a broken place, actually. A lot of pain, a lot of anger, a lot of death. But in the middle of Jerusalem, somewhere between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, is a little community on a hill. It's called Wahat al-Salam Neve Shalom. Wahat al-Salam is Arabic, and it means oasis of peace. And Neve Shalom, it's Hebrew, and it means oasis of peace. And here, in this little community, they're trying to live together. They're trying to figure out what it means to live peacefully. My favorite part about this little community is that the waiting list to live there is 100 families long. Everyone wants to come live in this place. They're open to it, they've discovered it, and they want to participate in it. We're not just talking about resurrection on a global, national scale here. We're talking about resurrection in our own lives too. That where there was death, there might be life. That the story may go on, even though we think the story has ended. There's a group in the States called StoryCorps, and they just go around and they collect stories. So I want to show you an excerpt just of one of these stories, a very short clip, with just a little bit of background. You'll see the titles for this too. There's a woman, Mary Johnson. Her son is killed at a very young age. He's a teenager by a 16-year-old. The 16-year-old goes to prison for 15 years. and is released. But I want you to listen for the resurrection in this tale.
You and I met at Stillwater Prison. I wanted to know if you were in the same mindset of what I remember from court, where I wanted to go over and hurt you, but you were not that 16-year-old. You were a grown man. I shared with you about my son.
And he became human to me. You know, when I met you, it was like, okay, this guy is real. And then when it was time to go, you broke down and started shedding tears. And the initial thing to do was just try to hold you up as best I can. Just hug you like I would my own mother, you know.
After you left the room, I began to say, I just hugged the man that murdered my son. And I instantly knew that all that anger and the animosity, all the stuff I had in my heart for 12 years for you, I knew it was over, that I had totally forgiven you.
As far as receiving forgiveness from you, sometimes I still don't know how to take it because I haven't totally forgiven myself yet. It's something that I'm learning from you. I won't say that I have learned yet because it's still a process that I'm going through.
I treat you as I would treat my son, and our relationship is beyond belief. We live next door to one another.
Yeah, so you can see what I'm doing, you know, firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
We actually bump into each other all the time, leaving in and out of the house. And you know, our conversations, they come from, boy, how come you ain't called over here to check on me in a couple of days? You ain't even asked me if I need my garbage to go out.
Uh-huh.
I find those things funny because it's a relationship with a mother for real.
Well, my natural son is no longer here. I didn't see him graduate. You know, you're going to college. I'll have the opportunity to see you graduate. I didn't see him get married. Hopefully one day I'll be able to experience that with you.
Just to hear you say those things and to be in my life in the manner that which you are is my motivation. It motivates me to make sure that I stay on the right path. You still believe in me. And the fact that you can do it despite how much pain I cause you, it's amazing.
I know it's not an easy thing, you know, to be able to share our story together. So I admire that you can do this.
I love you, lady.
I love you too, son.
Life where there was once death. The story goes on even though we thought it had ended. Are you open to it? Will you discover it and name it? Will you participate in it? I hope so. Amen.